There is a small island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Most people on Earth have never heard of it. It does not appear on tourist maps. It has no restaurants, no hotels, no civilian population. But for the last 5 decades, it has been one of the most important military addresses on the planet. Its name is Diego Garcia. And on March 20th, 2026, Iran tried to hit it with ballistic missiles. Not a base in Iraq, not a ship in the Persian Gulf, not a target within 2,000 kilometers of Iranian soil. A base sitting 4,000 kilometers away in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happened, what it reveals, what is still unclear, and why this moment will be studied in military strategy classrooms for decades. Let's get into it.
Before we talk about missiles, we need to understand the target. Diego Garcia is a coral atoll, shaped almost like a footprint, located in the Chagos Islands, a British overseas territory. The island itself is barely a kilometer wide at its broadest point. There is almost nothing there except jungle, ocean, and one of the most strategically loaded military installations on Earth. The base is jointly operated by the United States and the United Kingdom. It hosts a deepwater port capable of accommodating aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. It has a runway long enough and strong enough to land B-2 stealth bombers, the most advanced strategic strike aircraft ever built. It has housed long-range B-52s, B-1 Lancers, refueling tankers, surveillance aircraft, and the logistical infrastructure that supports military operations across an enormous stretch of the globe, from East Africa to Southeast Asia to the Persian Gulf. If you wanted to project American air power toward the Middle East, South Asia, or the Western Pacific while keeping those assets as far from enemy fire as possible, Diego Garcia is where you would park them. That is exactly why it was built there. The base is a strategic airfield capable of hosting B-2 stealth bombers, located nearly 2,500 miles or 4,000 kilometers from Iran. And that distance was not an accident. It was a design feature.
Not months. Years, the Western intelligence consensus held that Iran's ballistic missiles had a maximum effective range of approximately 2,000 kilometers. That number was not guesswork. It was based on observed missile tests, analysis of known systems, satellite imagery of launch infrastructure, and the Iranian government's own public statements. Iran had claimed to adhere to a self-imposed missile range moratorium of 2,000 kilometers. That 2,000-kilometer figure defined everything. It determined which American bases in the region were considered exposed, which required active missile defense investment, and, critically, which were considered safe rear areas beyond Iranian reach. Diego Garcia at 4,000 kilometers was not just outside the threat envelope. It was so far outside it that the island effectively did not factor into Iran threat calculations at all. The Pentagon built its entire regional defensive architecture around that number. And on March 20th, Iran demonstrated that the number was wrong.
Here is what the reporting tells us, sourced from multiple governments and verified independently. Iran launched ballistic missiles at the joint US-UK military base in Diego Garcia on Friday, demonstrating a weapons capability that goes beyond what Tehran was known to have possessed. The base suffered no damage, according to a person familiar with the matter. Bloomberg. The attack involved the launch of 2 ballistic missiles that failed to reach the atoll. One malfunctioned in flight, while the other was intercepted. Euronews. So the missiles did not hit the base. Let's be clear about that. No B-2 bombers were destroyed. No runway was cratered. No personnel were killed on Diego Garcia. But here is why that detail, while important, does not change the core story. The significance of this event is not the damage report. The significance is the demonstrated range. Iran launched ballistic missiles that traveled far enough to reach a target that every Western defense model said was beyond Iranian reach. The question of whether those specific missiles hit their target on this specific day is almost secondary to the revelation that they got there at all. Think of it this way. If someone you were certain was unarmed suddenly produces a weapon and fires it at you from across a room and misses, the miss does not unarm them. Your threat assessment has permanently changed.
The technical
That is what happened here.
What did Iran actually use? This is where the picture gets genuinely complex, and it is worth being honest about the uncertainty. Israel's military chief, Eyal Zamir, claimed that Iran used a two-stage intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of 4,000 kilometers to target the US-UK base in Diego Garcia. In a video statement, Zamir said these missiles were not intended to hit Israel and that their range reaches the capitals of Europe, with Berlin, Paris, and Rome all within direct threat range. However, and this matters, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said the alliance could not confirm Israel's claim that the projectiles used were Iranian intercontinental ballistic missiles. So what did Iran actually fire? Missile experts point to a few candidates. The obvious candidate is the Khorramshahr missile, which would be capable of covering the 3,800 kilometers or so to Diego Garcia, if only just, carrying a very light warhead and using some of its propellant reserves for extra range. The Israeli assessment indicates that Tehran likely used space-launched vehicle-derived architectures rather than the Khorramshahr in those attacks. Systems such as the Zoljana, the Qased, and, likeliest of all, the Game 100 provide a closer design philosophy analogy. These projectiles combine verified multi-stage architectures with demonstrated advances in solid propellant technology. The honest answer is, we do not know with certainty which specific system was used. What we do know is that something flew approximately 4,000 kilometers from Iranian territory toward a base that was supposed to be untouchable. The intelligence failure. Now let's talk about the part of this story that deserves more scrutiny than it has received. How did Western intelligence get the range assessment so wrong for so long? For years, Tehran maintained the convenient fiction that its missiles possessed a self-imposed range ceiling of 1,240 miles. This posture served Iran's diplomatic interests while masking the true pace of its development program. But there are experts who say this was not entirely a surprise to everyone paying attention. There has been speculation before that Iran could be capable of strikes beyond the claimed 1,250-mile limit. They just hadn't shown their cards. The attack on Diego Garcia would seem to be that moment. Sources told CNN late last month that there was no intelligence to suggest that Iran is pursuing an intercontinental ballistic missile program to hit the US at this time. So intelligence services were watching Iran's space program carefully. They knew Iran had been developing multi-stage rocket technology. Since Trump's first term, successive U.S. intelligence community evaluations had consistently assessed that Tehran's nominally civilian space program had credibly and deliberately pursued intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities. The gap appears to be not that the capability was invisible, but that the decision was made not to attribute operational long-range strike capability to Iran until Iran demonstrated it. That distinction matters enormously for how we interpret this event. The geopolitical ripple effects. The attempted Diego Garcia strike did not happen in a vacuum. It happened during an active conflict, and its consequences are already reshaping the calculations of multiple governments. A lecturer at the Doha Institute told Al Jazeera that the reported Iranian attack changes the calculus of the war for the U.S., noting that if you reverse the direction of these missiles, they could reach London, changing the calculus not only for the U.S., but also for a reluctant London and European Union. Analyst Trita Parsi told CNN that the attempted attack suggests other bases the U.S. thought were outside Iran's range may actually be within range, along with American ships that have been kept 3,000 kilometers away. He also noted the possibility that some European countries allowing the U.S. to use their military bases might reconsider. If accurate, this means the Diego Garcia strike was not purely an Iranian operation. It was potentially a multi-party intelligence and military collaboration, which raises the stakes considerably. What remains genuinely uncertain? Good analysis requires honesty about what we do not know, and there is quite a bit we do not know here. We do not know the exact system Iran used. We do not know how close the missiles actually came to the base before one malfunctioned and one was intercepted. A UK minister stated that neither missile got close to Diego Garcia and that the UK was not required to take action, and that normal operations continue. We do not know whether Iran intentionally missed as a demonstration or genuinely attempted to hit the base and failed due to technical limitations. Those are very different strategic signals. Missile expert Dr. Marcus Schiller notes that Diego Garcia is a strip of atoll barely a kilometer across at its widest point, and hitting such a small target with ballistic missiles like the Khorramshahr has proved difficult in the past, especially at such a distance. A direct hit from the kind of light warhead the missile could carry at that range would damage a building with a direct hit, but would not have much effect on an airfield. And Iran itself has denied the attack entirely, calling it an Israeli false flag operation. The UK and US governments confirmed the launch occurred. Iran denies it. NATO cannot confirm the specific missile type. We are operating in a genuine fog of information here, and anyone telling you they have complete certainty about every detail of this event is overstating what the evidence currently supports.
Here is what we can say with confidence, cutting through both the hyperbole and the dismissiveness. The Diego Garcia incident represents the first known attempt by Iran to strike a target at this range operationally, not in a test, not an acclaimed capability, but in actual combat conditions during an active conflict. Whether the missiles worked perfectly or not, whether they were intercepted or malfunctioned, the launch itself rewrites the operational risk calculus for every military planner who has been working from a 2,000-kilometer threat model. The attempted strike on Diego Garcia marks a decisive inflection point in Iran's strategic missile posture, one that demands a fundamental reassessment of existing threat frameworks. At the same time, context matters. The idea that Iran can send a ballistic missile 4,000 kilometers has more symbolic value than operational impact at this stage, and it is hard to see what Iran could hope to gain from actually striking European capitals. Such a strike would almost certainly trigger a reaction that puts the Iranian regime in a worse situation than it is already in. This is a story about demonstrated capability, deterrence signaling, and intelligence reassessment. It is significant. It is not the end of American military power in the region. Both things can be true simultaneously. Measured conclusion. When a small island in the Indian Ocean becomes a flashpoint in a major Middle Eastern conflict, when missiles fired from one continent reach toward a base on another, it forces every observer to sit with uncomfortable questions. How much do we actually know about what any adversary is capable of? How much of our sense of security is built on assessments that could be wrong? And what does it mean when the gap between what we believe and what is real gets closed in real time, in real combat, in the middle of an active war? Diego Garcia did not fall. The base is operational. American forces are still flying missions, but a number changed. The threat envelope expanded, and the maps that military planners have been working from need to be redrawn. That is the story of March 20th, 2026. Not apocalypse, not nothing, something in between, which is usually where the most important history actually lives. If this breakdown was useful, share it with someone who wants real analysis instead of hot takes, and stay with us as this conflict continues to develop. We will be here.